Hi everyone, welcome to Byte and Beyond with Uday. This is the third part for our global exception handling series, and in this video, we will cover how to use those custom exception in the service layer. So, whatever exception we have created so far, those exception we are going to use in our service layer, and in appropriate case, we will throw an exception from our service layer. So this is the main agenda for this video. So let's begin. So as I mentioned, I'm going to use those custom exception in my service layer. So this is our service layer, employee service IMPL. Okay. So if we see our first method, which is responsible to save an employee. So I want to validate this method. So basically, if we see the over here, we are expecting employee DTO, and inside the employee DTO, I can see bunch of fields. Okay, but if I see employee ID, you can see we haven't added any validation annotation for the employee ID, because in create we do not need employee ID, and for update we need an employee ID. So that is why we haven't added the validation annotation on this employee ID field. So what I'm going to do is, so I want to make sure whenever user send the post request to save an employee, user should not send the employee ID. Okay. User should never send the employee ID when user tries to create an employee. So for that, I'm going to add a validation over here. So let's do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create one method which will help me to validate that in employee DTO employee ID is present or not, and accordingly I will throw an exception. Okay, so let's do that. So my method name should be validate employee ID for create. Okay, because this method is specific to create, I'm going to use this method name, which looks more appropriate to me. Okay, and I'm going to expect param in the as a type long, and um, I'm going to write if condition, basically if ID is not null. Okay, because in create I want to make sure that ID should not be present. So that is why I'm saying ID is not null. So let me quickly implement this method and then I will explain what I am doing over here, right? So it will be much better to understand for you. Okay. So this is the custom exception which we have created. Okay. Just for your reference. This is the custom exception which we have created earlier. And I am going to use that over here. And I'm going to pass an error message which says remove employee ID from request. Okay, I'm going to say get message, and that is it. This looks good to me. Yeah, that's perfect. Okay. So let me explain what we are doing over here so you can understand. So this method is for the um, create method, right? This one, basically save method. Okay. And over here, I want to make sure that whenever user tries to save an employee, the ID should not be present. Employee ID should not be present. In case ID is present, so I am checking if ID is not null. Okay. In case if ID is present, so in that case, ID won't be null, right? If someone is sending ID, the ID won't be null. ID must have some value. Okay. So if there is an ID, I am going to throw this exception, bad request exception. Okay. And this exception, this is the custom exception, okay, which we have created earlier. And I am passing this message. So this constant message also we have created in our last video, part 2. So this is the message. Do not include employee ID on create. This will be the message. Okay. So this message will be get passed over here in the constructor. Okay. So error message basically storing our error messages. This is the constants. So that is why it is enum. Type is enum over here. This is our custom exception. Okay. To throw bad request exception. Okay. Okay. So this is the purpose of our validate email ID for create method. Now there should be one more method, okay, which is going to validate the email address, email uniqueness, okay, because um you know uh, whenever we have multiple employees, right, and we want to make sure that each employee should have the unique email address. So for that we need to write some validation. Okay. So that's what we are going to do in this method. Okay. So let's do that. So the method name should be validate email and uniqueness for create. Okay. This looks good to me. Okay. Okay. So what we are doing over here, the method name is validate email uniqueness for create, and I am expecting the param as a string where we are passing email address. Okay, and then this is our repository because obviously I need to check the database. So for that I am using the repository, and you can see over here we are getting the compilation error. So what what we should do over here to remove this compilation error, we should go to the employee repository. Okay, so let me type er, and this is our employee repository, and I'm going to introduce one method over here. Okay, so the method is boolean, the type will be boolean, and I'm going to say exist by email, right? This looks good to me. And if you say the compilation error is gone. Okay. So let me explain high level. This method is responsible to uh, to check if the email which we are passing over here, so it is already present or not. Okay. If the email is already present, in that case, I will throw this bad request exception. Okay. And you can see this is the message which we are going to pass in the Bad request constructor, the message name is employee with email, and this is, you can see, this is the placeholder, okay, already exists. So how it is going to work? So this is the message. Uh, this is the message, okay. And as a placeholder, I am passing my email. For example, let's say abc@gmail.com. Okay. So the message will be employee with email abc@gmail.com already exists. So that's what user is going to see. So the email which we are passing over here, the email which we are passing over here, it is going to take place of this placeholder. Okay. So that's how this placeholder basically works. Okay. So our, and yeah, you might thinking why we are adding this validation or this check when we are creating an employee, because we are creating a new employee, right? And we need to make sure that each employee must have an unique email address, because it is not correct that two different employees have the same email address, which is wrong, right? So that is why we are adding this check. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a wrapper method over here. Okay. Let me create this method first, and then I will explain what is the purpose of this wrapper method. So this method name will be validate employee for create, and I'm going to expect this employee DTO over here. That is correct. And I'm going to call these two methods. Okay. Validate employee ID. Okay. It will call this method, and validate email uniqueness for create. Okay. This will call this method. Okay. And I'm going to use this wrapper method inside my save employee business logic method. Okay. You can see I'm using this wrapper method over here. Okay. So if I click on this method, if I go into this method, what I'm doing over here, this is the wrapper method which calls two another methods, two other methods. The first one is validate employee ID for create. So this basically validates the employee ID. If it is present, ID is present, it will throw an exception. And this method will check that that email address is already exists or not. If the email address already exists, it will throw an exception. So our create or save employee check or validation is done over here. Let's move to the next method, which one is update. So we are going to do similar thing for the update as well, but the check will be slightly different. So let's see that what I'm going to do over here. So similar to this ID check, I'm going to write ID check for the update as well, but it will be slightly different. Okay. Mm. Now let me create a method. The method name should be validate employee ID for update. Okay. Okay. So if you see, there is a slight difference between these two methods. In update case, what we are doing over here is, if the ID is null. Okay. If the ID is null, then we are throwing this exception. And in create, if ID is not null, then we are throwing an exception. So for the update, when the ID is null, we are throwing an exception. Why we are throwing an exception over here? Because in order to update an employee, we need an employee ID, right? Because let's say I have thousands of employees in my database, okay? And I want to update an employee whose ID is 20, right? So if I am not going to pass any ID over here, how I am going to update that particular employee's email address, right? Because I cannot, I have thousands of employees. I must have to pass this ID. Otherwise, I won't be able to update any records. Okay. Because I need some indication from the user that I want to update uh, the the employee's ID who has the employee ID as 20. Okay. So that is why this is required. In order to update user, we must have the ID available in our request. Okay. So that is why this exception is here. Okay. Now, let me create one more exception or one more method over here, basically. Okay, so this is the method which checks the uniqueness of email in a different way. Okay, so that's what we are going to do here is. So, what I am going to do, let me make it slightly more readable. Okay, ID also looks good over here. That's fine. And this is email. Okay. So you can see this is the another method, another validation check for the update. Okay. So let me explain what exactly we are doing over here. So if you see, we are passing two things over here. The first one is the ID, and the second one is the email. Okay. And what I am doing over here is I am fetching, I'm checking. First of all, I am checking. Hey DB, I'm asking DB, hey DB, do we have any email address with this particular email? If the DB says yes, then my flow comes over here. Okay. If DB said yes, we have an employee with this particular email address. So my flow come over here. So this the above condition become true, and my flow comes at the line number 82, the line which I am currently highlighting. And then what I'm doing, I'm fetching that employee with the ID. Okay, so I'm basically using this find by ID internally, find by ID method internally, and I am basically fetching an employee. Okay, once I have this employee, okay, once I have this employee, I am checking that existing employee. Okay, this one is the existing employee dot get email. So the we are fetching an employee with this ID. Okay, once we have an employee, we are checking the ID of the fetched user and the ID which we are passing over here. So it must be equal. If it is not equal, in that case, I am throwing this exception. The exception is employee email already exists, and here is the message: employee with email already exists. Okay. So why I need to write this logic? Because think, for example, think about it. We have two user, okay, the Harry and Emma. Okay. Now Emma has an email address as like Emma@gmail.com. Okay. We have two email address. Let me write over here so you can understand. Emma, sorry, Emma. Okay. Emma. Let me write in short. Emma@gmail.com. Okay. We have user as Emma. Okay. I'm writing in short form. And then we have another user. Okay. Harry. Okay. Looks good. And his email address is also harry@gmail.com. Okay. Now let's assume uh, we are updating the let's say let's give the ID as well. The ID is 1 for Emma and the ID is 2 for Harry. Okay. Okay. So 1 is for Emma and 2 for 2 is for Harry. Okay. Now let's say we are updating Harry. Okay. So our user ID is 2 and our email address is Harry. Let's say yeah. Let's say Harry. In this case, let's check the happy scenario first. Let's say 2 and our email address is Harry. So this is 2 and this is harry@gmail.com. Now what we are checking over here, we are passing this email address and asking DB, hey, do we have this email address in our database? It says yes because we have Harry in the database. Okay. So we are passing this ID2 and fetching the Harry user. Okay. And we are checking and we are checking that we are basically comparing the user which we get using this ID, which is 2. So in this case, we will get a Harry user. Okay. And Harry has an email address as harry@gmail.com. This will also become, this is also harry@gmail.com, and this is also returning the harry@gmail.com, right? So in this case, it will become true. Okay. Once when it is become true, it won't go inside this if condition. Okay. So it won't throw basically the exception. Now think about the negative scenario. Okay. The ID will remain same too. But so when we send the ID as 2, and so we are our intention is to update the user Harry. Okay, not the Emma. When we are passing ID to, our intention is to update the user Harry, not the Emma. So let's say ID 2. Now for some reason Harry is sending, okay, Emma's email address, which is emma@gmail.com. Okay, so ID 2 and email address emma@gmail.com. Now over here again we will ask DB. DB will say, yes, we have emma@gmail.com email available in the DB. Okay. So once that is done, then we will fetch. Okay. We will fetch an employee using that ID. Our ID is 2. So it will fetch Harry over here. Now what we are doing over here is we are doing Harry dot get email. So Harry's email is harry@gmail.com, and Harry is passing this Emma's email address, emma@gmail.com. So what Harry is doing over here is Harry is trying to say that Emma's email address is mine. Okay, Harry is basically saying that Harry is saying this. Harry is trying to say this, that hey, for me, store this email address. Okay, but this email address emma@gmail.com is already saved with the user one, which is Emma. So Harry is basically trying to steal others email address, so which is wrong. So that is why if the ID, okay, if the given ID, with the given ID, if we are fetching the user, and if the fetched user email address is not equal not equal with the past email address, then we are throwing an exception. We are doing the same thing over here, which I have explained. Basically Harry is trying to save with this email address, emma@gmail.com. So it is already persisted with the user Emma. So that is why we are throwing an exception. But now let's say Harry is saying Potter. potter@gmail.com. So in this case, we don't have any problem because we don't have any user with this email address. So in this case, it won't throw an exception. So that's why we are adding this exception over here. Okay, so this is the purpose. So we want to make sure whenever we update the user, we want to make sure that our email uniqueness it maintains the email addresses, and we make sure that the whatever email address we are trying to persist those email address are unique and it is not getting overlapped with another user. Okay, so this is the main purpose of this method. Okay, so now similarly, let me create a wrapper method for update. So it will be like validate employee for update. Yeah, this suggestion is perfect. So you can see this is our wrapper method similar to create, and inside we are calling these two methods validate employee ID for update, which will validate the ID, and this one is the for the email uniqueness, which will make sure that during update as well emails are unique. Okay, and this, as you know, this wrapper method we are going to use inside our update method. Okay, so these methods are for convenience only. Okay, so it is you don't have to create bunch of methods over here, but for the if you want to if you want to write a clean code or easy to manage or easy to maintain code, in that case it's better or it's recommended to create these separate methods. So what is the purpose of this creating separate methods? It is doing multiple things. First of all, our coding style will be clean. If another developer comes to you know another developers comes to see this method, or another developer is adding some other another features or new features in this service. Okay, so for that developer our method will be very easy to understand and it is very easy to maintain. If that developer needs to, let's say in future he needs to add one more validation for create, so it can easily creates one additional method over here, and then that developer can use this method inside this wrapper method. So it's become simple basically. Okay, so our code will become clean, and once the code become clean it is easier to maintain, and once you write this kind of methods you can reuse in multiple scenarios. Okay, so this is the main purpose of writing this kind of methods, and then we use those methods in our actual methods or actual business logic. Okay, so that's why I'm writing separate methods. So from the beginning you follow the best coding practice. Okay, this is the industry standard, because in real world project you must have to write a clean code and easy to maintain code. Okay, so this is the main agenda, or this is the main purpose. Okay, so update is done, and then we have find by id. Find by id already looks good to me, but instead of response status exception I would like to use my own exception which we have created in last video, our custom exception, right? So let's use our custom exception over here instead of the inbuilt response status exception. Okay, because I want to make sure that my my error response remain consistent across the application. So I want to use my custom exceptions. So let's do that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to, instead of response status exception, I'm going to use my resource not found exception. Okay. And instead, this is not found. I don't need this. I'm going to pass the actual error message. Okay, employee not found. Yes, this suggestion is perfect. Okay, great. So yeah, let me explain. This is our another custom exception. So far, we have used bad request exception. That is great. The bad request exception status is, 400. You are might thinking I don't see any status over here. So from where it will go, it will going to fetch the HTTP status 400. So I will explain. Hold on, I will explain that as well. But let's finish this so you don't get confused you don't get confused between multiple topics. So let's focus on this topic. Let's complete this, and then I will explain you whole flow from start to beginning when we are doing the testing. Okay, so it will become more easier for you to understand or digest. Okay, so this is the another custom exception which we have created in case of the resource is not found. So in over here, if the employee do not found, we will throw this exception. It is similar to bad request exception. The signature is pretty much same, but I will show you. I will explain you why we are creating the multiple exception, even though the signature are same. So I will explain you. Do not worry. For now, if the resource is not found, we are going to use this exception. Okay. And over here, we are going to pass the error message in the constructor. Okay. It is expecting the error message over here. So the our error message is this one: employee not found with the ID. This is the placeholder which is going to which is going to be replaced by this employee ID. So the message will become employee not found with the ID. If I am passing 100, it will become 100. If I am passing 20, it will become 20. So that's how it works. Okay, so it looks good to me. Perfect. Then we can see delete by ID method. So I think we should add validation over here as well. Um, yeah, let me first finish the find by ID explanation. So we have just changed the exception type. Instead of the inbuilt exception, we are using custom exception. And the main purpose of this exception is whenever the employee is not found in our database, let's say user is passing 100 ID and we don't have any employee with ID 100. So in this case, we will throw this resource not found exception and the HTTP status code will be 404. Okay. So this is the main purpose of this exception, resource not found. Now we require the same exception in the delete by ID method as well. Why? We are going to, delete an employee by ID. Let's say same example. Okay. I'm going to delete an employee with the ID 100, but we don't have any employee with the 100 ID. So in that case, I should throw resource not found exception from here. Okay. Let's say now employee, I have an employee ID with 20 and user is passing 20 over here. I will let the user, I will let that user to delete that particular employee. Okay. In that case, I won't throw an exception because we already have an employee. So this is the main purpose. So I think let me write one more method over here. Okay. So let's do that. So the method will remain private because I'm using it internally. Okay. And then what I'm doing, I'm I'm going to write a method name, validate employee. exist by ID. Perfect. And the suggestion is also correct. So this method is validate employee exists by ID. This is ID. If that employee is not present, I will throw an exception. Okay, that's it. Nothing fancy, nothing complicated. If employee is not present, okay, in that case it will return. Um, if employee is not present, it will return false, and if it is false, then we will throw this resource not found exception. Okay, and it is similar to get by ID. Okay, so that's what we are doing over here. Okay, so let me use this validate method over here as well. Okay. Okay, validate employee exists by ID. So it will call this method. Fine. Okay, perfect. We can use this validate employee exists by ID method in our get method as well. Okay. So in that case, I don't need to chain this lambda expression. Okay. So let me do that. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this. Okay. I'm going to remove this, and this will return what I can say. Just a moment. This will return. That should Okay, this will directly return an employee, and over here I have added the validation. So I don't need to check. I can blindly get an employee. Okay. It is giving me warning over here. Okay. It is recommending that I should use is present, is empty. That's fine. Okay. Because even if I don't use those recommended methods, I'm already checking that if the with the given ID employee is present or not. If it is not present, we are already throwing an exception. So we can ignore this warning basically. Okay. So this is the real example. We are using the same method validate employee exists by ID in two methods, find by ID and delete by ID. So guys, that is why we should create such methods so we can reuse and it looks clean. So I think um, we have covered all the methods, and in file all we don't need to add any validation, because if there is no employees present in our database, we will return an empty error list. Okay, so we don't need to worry about much. So I think we are done with our implementation. So that is it for this video. In this video, we have learned how to use custom exception in the service layer. In the next video, we are going to test the APIs and we are going to see how the API behaves when there is an exception occurrence in our application. After implementing this global exception handling, what has been changed, how the API looks, or what will be the API response when there is an exception occurrence. So that will be the agenda for our next video. So stay tuned. See you in the next video. Bye.